Benar sir, my first question to you is, you have your film on Mujib has done so well in Bangladesh, and I think it is running in London also in many places. I want to start with what made you decide to direct a film on Mujibur Rahman?
Well, actually, it was it's one of those odd situations because it wasn't as though I was planning to make a film about him, but the government of India, that is the Prime Minister of India and the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, they had a meeting on the sidelines of one of those big meetings, the Asian countries and all that sort of thing.
Right.
So during that, on the sidelines of that meeting, uh, the- our prime minister mentioned to uh, Sheikh Hasina that maybe it might be a good idea to do a film, and then which sort of interests both India as well as Bangladesh, and in many ways, is part of our history, common history. And when that happened, I think the Sheikh Hasina said that why don't we think in terms of making a film on Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. Now,
Right.
because Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was somebody who brought Bangladesh close to India. When it was part of Pakistan, then our relations weren't that good. But when it became an independent country of Bangladesh, and then Mujib was released from internment in West Pakistan, and he came back to Bangladesh to take over, and we had just then fought a war with with Pakistan, and so this was in many ways a liberated part of because you see, Pakistan was both there was East Pakistan, there was West Pakistan. So this part, after the 71 war, was in many ways liberated, and that was given to the Bangladesh people to as was not given really because they took it because there was Mukti Bahini and a whole lot of forces that were against the domination of West Pakistan, and they had become an independent nation. And they had got Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, who had been interned by the Pakistani authorities, and nobody was sure whether he would be living or they would execute him or whatever. But he then, came back. When he came back, he took over the country, and the first elections took place, independent elections, in which he became the head of the government. And that
That's
particular, yes, and at
you.
that time, because it's a very interesting time for Bangladesh because he announced the first elections there, and their party, that is the Awami League, which he was heading, uh, won hands down, because there was hardly any opposition to him. And
Yeah.
he became the head of the government at that time. Now, but that whole thing did not eventually last because there was a conspiracy against him, and then
Yes.
there were forces against him. And
Hmm.
eventually, he, along with all the male members, basically, because the two female members, that is the his, I mean,
Daughters,
Sheikh
two
Hasina,
daughters.
two daughters,
Ah.
they managed to leave Bangladesh, but everybody else who was there was assassinated or incarcerated, one of the two, and so,
So,
but but her Sheikh Mujib's entire family, including the youngest son, everybody was assassinated,
so
and
Benegal sir,
but this assassination was not not the job of somebody from outside. There was a conspiracy among some of the disgruntled members of the armed forces, and that it was their conspiracy to eliminate the entire family of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, apart from himself. Now, this particular thing, which was terrible because it was almost like a Greek tragedy. In fact, a
Yeah.
Shakespearean tragedy, you might say, because
Yeah, and that brings me to your film, Benegal Saab. Your film, that is the beginning and the end of your film. When the film begins, that is such a stunning start of your film, and of course the end of the film. Because myself and Kusum were watching it together, and Kusum was totally shattered because she had forgotten that Mujibur Rahman and his whole family was killed, and that's a very very strong scene. At the same time, your beginning of the film is so stunning, and it really takes over the audience when he watches from the window of the plane. So I just want to ask you about these two scenes, and also about your preparation to make a film on Mujib.
well, you see, in terms of introducing the story, I felt that his return to Bangladesh was good because that would set the stage for his story to be told. You see, because that was that he when he was he was incarcerated in Pakistan. At that time, he had to get back, and he didn't want to travel in a Pakistani aircraft. So it was the government of UK, the British government, decided to send him an aircraft, from Britain, and and that is how he came. He returned. So when he returns in that British aircraft, and so you see it inside. You see the inside of the aircraft from where from one of the windows. He sees as he starts to come towards Bangladesh. And so
Correct,
the
correct.
Bangladesh itself is introduced because Bangladesh is a very beautiful delta, and alongside the delta of both
Yes,
Ganga and Brahmaputra. So it's this very beautiful flat land, green and gold. And at no time of the year is it not green and gold, because if one side of it is being harvested, the other side is being sown, with the seed. So you have this continuous beautiful color that you have, and which I want to immediately catch, because that is what makes anybody who's from Bangladesh immediately, they get so nostalgic about the
yes.
countryside, to which they belong. And then, so that's the same feeling for Mujib himself, because you see, Mujib wrote a diary when he was incarcerated. You know,
Hmm.
it, and most of the film is based, his own thinking and everything else is based on the diary that he kept. And then, of
No,
course, we did a lot of research as well to get to know his childhood and different aspects of him, and when he got married, and because his wife was also quite an extraordinary person. So
the
there
film
was.
is, you have told the film from his wife's side, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
And
yes.
Benegal Sahib, about the end of the film, because I know your films are very very understated. That's your hallmark of your filmmaking. But of course, I know that in Nishant, the end was very violent, and in this film, it is even more gore and violent. But it was the reality. When you conceived the end of the film, did you not think about it's being so violent and its impact on the audience? What made you decide to project it the way you did?
No, because you see, I couldn't. I had. I wasn't very sure how I wanted to show that, because you see the I mean, some part of the family is still living. I mean, because Sheikh Hasina is there, who's now
Yeah,
the head of Bangladesh, I mean, the government of Bangladesh, but also her sister is there, living either in Germany or in Europe, certainly, married to a nuclear scientist there. Now, the thing was that without becoming too, it was too close to the bone for them. And I didn't want to do something that was a display of their suffering,
yeah,
film wise, because I myself shirk from that kind of thing. So, but what happened was I said what I should do, and then of course I was put at rest immediately by the Sheikh Hasina, because she had spoken to Gohar Rizvi, becomes a kind of spokesman for them, and lives in England. Actually, he's a professor.
mhm,
I think he's probably a Don. He's an Oxford Don or something. But
mhm,
anyway, uh, uh, she, I mean, communicated to him that I shouldn't worry about any of those things. I
mhm,
should make the film the way I think is the right way to make the film. So I had that whole tragic circumstances in which the family was eliminated, put back into the film, and so that of course I mean, this is what gives it a certain kind of Shakespearean tragedy.
yeah.
It's a big tragedy.
And
It is not.
of
Yeah.
course, your film, the way the film is carried by Arifin Shuvu. I mean, I think that he is the most potent factor in your film. So how could you get Arifin Shuvu? And I also want to know that the way he enacted his role, did he get some problem? Because Mujibur Rahman is such a huge figure like Gandhi in this country. So how was your approach towards making him at ease to do this role?
Because you see, the actor Arifin Shuhu, he really worked on this part. He worked on this for a long time, because he was absolutely conscious of the fact that he couldn't do any less. You see, because if
Right.
you remember, it was very much like the way the preparation went on when Gandhi was made. When Attenborough's Gandhi was made, the actor did the same thing. He went into a whole thing. Because he had to get the feeling of being Gandhi from inside, that sense. So okay, Arifin Shoo did the same. He really worked very, very hard. Of course, he's a brilliant actor, and he's done a whole lot of things, and he's one of the big stars of Bangladeshi cinema. So he was but he really worked very hard, because I remember when I was auditioning for this particular part, I was sitting in Calcutta, and many of the Bangladeshi actors and Bengali actors from Calcutta as well were being auditioned. And at that time, Arifin came. The moment he walked in, I knew that I had found my, Mujib. When he walked into the, because you see, he had the same kind of height. He had very similar looks, except for the fact that he had very short hair. He had very short hair, and so I needed to build it up with the kind, because Mujib had absolutely straight hair also, and he used to comb back all the way back. So we we had to do a little bit of all of that. So we had a series of wigs for him to see which fits him correctly and right, and so on and so forth. And after having done all that, and then of course we had to match him, because he's very tall for a Bengali, Arifin True is pretty tall. He's taller than Mujib was. But
Really?
we had to work out the rest of the cast and their heights and so on and so forth on the basis of Arifin. Because I didn't want him to stand like he should look like a beanpole with a whole lot of small little things around him. So naturally, we had to worry about a lot of these kind of things because the rest of the cast was not very difficult to do. But the man who played Suravardi, for instance, he doesn't live in Bangladesh. He lives in America, I think. And
Ah,
then there was some of the actors were also one or two of them came from Britain, because you
hmm.
have a very large Bangladeshi population in Britain and Germany,
Yeah.
and so in Canada. So we had a we had to choose our actors from all these many places.
So, Benegal
So
sir, I just want you to tell me if there is an anecdote or anything where Arifin really got stuck and became conscious, and how you made him easy. Was there any moment when he felt, because sometimes actors do feel at a loss when they are not able to emote. Was there any such moment while you directed him?
you see, once Arifin got into the part, there was no, yeah, there was no question of ever being out of that particular character. It's
Right,
like
right.
Kathakali. The Kathakali actors, dancers. What happens is when their makeup is being done, they are constantly uh, getting into the part. It takes them about 8 to 10 hours for that whole makeup to be put on. During that time, the whole personality of what they're going to play gets into them. And similarly, when they finish with the part, it has to be drawn out of them. The
Yeah,
character, so that they don't become that. They don't
right,
become
right.
the part. They have
Yes.
to
They
take it
they
off.
go through some psychological problem, sometimes.
Of course, for some people it is. So that has to happen. Now,
Yeah.
but of course, Arifin is an extremely experienced actor, and not
Hmm.
only that, he's also a theater actor, and
Right.
being a theater actor, he has very great advantage over people who are not from the theater, who don't have a background in the theater.
I remember at the launch of Mujib, he said that even now he's unable to believe that he has done a role for Shyam Benegal. So he's quite humble, I think, in that sense.
Yeah. Well, but not only him. You see,
Uh,
because Mujib in the film is seen from boyhood. So that we had to have not one actor, but we
right.
had to have three actors to play the three age groups. The third
Yeah.
is the one where the contemporary, and how everybody remembers him, because that is the adult Mujib. So,
Right.
but we have these, from the time he's young. And similarly, his wife, Faziluddin Nisa, now his wife, Fazluddin, it's very difficult, tongue twister, the name. But
Yeah.
yeah, so she was the part she had to play, because she's seen from a much younger age, from a little girl.
Mm.
So we had to have how many? About four of them until she reaches adulthood. And
Mm.
so that too was very difficult because they had to get their parts right, and they had to remember what they did as children, so that they could, if there is anything that they, certain expressions remain with you. So those
Yes.
things they have to match with each other. Yes, which was
Yeah.
wonderful. Yeah.
So, Benyal Sahab, coming to your scripting and the way that you have shown the story, because India, Indira Gandhi's government played a great role in shaping Bangladesh in making it independent. So you have just used the documentary footage of Indira Gandhi. I mean, did you not think that you could also create a character of Indira Gandhi like you created Sohrawardi and so? And why did you decide that?
No, I didn't want to do that for a very simple reason. Because, Indira Gandhi's part in this, I mean, that is not the crucial part. She 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 did. I mean, for instance, India did help in a very important way, because
Right.
by giving succor, for giving help and training facilities for Mukti Bahini to develop, things like that. But the fact is that first of all, the Mrs. Gandhi herself did not want to kind of give the impression, and also, the reality of it was that the Mukti Bahini and the forces that wanted to make the Bangladesh free were played for the substantial, the most important role. It wasn't just Mrs. Gandhi,
Right.
because although, I mean, at that time, you have people from each country wanting to take some kind of credit, which, but then the fact is that credit should be shared between the two, but mainly the real thrust came from Bangladesh itself, you know, and
Right.
it was led definitely by Mujibur Rahman's party, Awami League. So the question was not of any other kind, but we had to be very careful in our rendition of history, so that we wouldn't, walk on eggshells, I mean, so
Yes.
we,
Yes.
yeah, we didn't want to do any of that, because we wanted to be absolutely true to
No,
history.
but I think it worked very well. Indira Gandhi showing the footage, it really gave a dimension to the film, and that is what I liked. I also want to tell you, tongue in cheek, that I thought that you are one of the veteran filmmakers. Like, I saw that Akira Kurosawa made his last film when he was 84 years old, and you have made a huge historical film when you are nearly 90. So you have, in a way, surpassed Akira Kurosawa. What do you feel about that?
Well, you keep making films as long as you can. So I don't think there's any age is really a number in that sense. If you keep
Exactly.
physically well and mentally active, so I don't worry about that sort of thing. As long as I can, I will continue to make films.
So are you already in your next project? Would you like to tell me about that?
Well, I'm working on it, because I'm working on a project, but this is a slightly different kind of project. It's not a project about a personality and so on and so forth, but it's also about a little more abstract thing, about how development, how development actually takes place in a country like India, and
Right,
how,
right.
because one of the things about India has been that, I can tell you, like sitting in my office here in Tardiv, when I used
Yes,
to, because I've occupied this office since the late 1970s, and
I know.
I remembered that time, that when I came to my office, there used to be little pockets of beggars, at street corners and so on and so forth. And when cars came to stop because of red light, then they would all come like, bees to honey to every little car that was standing there. And how
Hmm.
from that situation, how things have changed so rapidly that there's not a single beggar on the streets of Bombay. You
Wow.
know, all this has changed. I mean, because India has developed in an extraordinary way. But we didn't show when the first two 5-year plans took place, but slowly
Yes.
it started to develop. So today, you don't see any of this. We used to see bicycles on the road in the city of Bombay. You don't see a single bicycle.
So your new film is about that. That is the theme of your new film, is that?
Yeah, because that's the theme of the new film. That
Yeah,
how
and
how
have you named the
not
film?
only are we developing, but how we have developed. And now the problem is now is of the completely different nature. How are you going, for for a country that is largely becoming middle class,
Yes,
urban and particularly becoming middle class, brings a new set of problems.
exactly.
Housing becomes a huge problem. Housing, and everybody wants better housing. If
Right.
those people who used to live in chawls, I mean single rooms, 5 people, 6 people, and so on, because and those were the chawls that were built during the turn of the 20th century, when
Hmm.
Bombay used to be a textile, mills were developing here, and people used to come and clog the city
Hmm.
for work in the mills, etc., etc. But their living conditions were dreadful. I mean, but today you don't have that kind of problem. You have a different kind of problem. For people who lived in one room tenements, now they would want to live in a bedroom and a living room and the kitchen. They want at least this basic facility,
Yeah, yeah.
which
What is
means
also coming back to your this historical themes, what I really like that uh, even after the coming of the rightist government of Narendra Modi, you have done two big, huge works on history. One is, the work on constitution, Samvidhan, and this film. So I'm just curious to know how did the Prime Minister respond, and what was his government's attitude towards your doing these two big projects?
No, but you see, it's not big projects really. It has to do with the fact that since you live in this country, since I live in this country, I like to track the way we have developed and the way we are developing.
Right.
It's very interesting because the earlier generations, say from 1947 onwards, that was the developing generation. Now we are having people who are already in a developed, not developing, but it's a developed generation. Now today you don't. If you somebody said that India is underdeveloped, of course not. Are we developing? No, we have developed.
Exactly.
Because it's the only problem, of course, we have now is how do we cater to this kind of exploding population? How
Hmm.
do we feed all of them and keep
Yeah.
to a certain standard for most people?
Hmm.
So, because you see, this country is turning into a middle class country.
Yes.
Yeah, it wasn't so earlier, and because of that, it's fascinating because the present prime minister sees the country differently from where he's placed compared to people like Nehru and all the people, Shastri and so on and so forth. Because today we can proudly say that we are a fully developed country. We are properly developed country. We have in many ways eliminated poverty, that naked poverty that we used to be faced with all in my growing up years, it was like that.
Yes,
You know,
yes. So,
it is different.
so do you think that the attitude of the present government is a progression, or do you think he's right in that?
You see, there is a certain path that we have taken to development. I think this is what is happening. That's what I want to feel the pulse. So my next project is going to be about, how is it? What is the motivation now for people to develop,
Right,
and
right,
and how are they developing at grassroots level? Not, urban, fine, urban development is okay, but what is happening at the grassroots level? Have early, how early work from 1952 onwards, all the work that the country has done, the nation has done for itself, and how it is going on. That is something I want to feel the pulse of that. So my next project deals with that aspect of it. You
that's
know, so,
very that's very
yeah.
interesting. I think it will be like all your films, you have never repeated yourself. And I've also heard that the prime minister of this country, he's so proud of your work that he presents the copy of Samvidhan wherever he goes. Is that true?
Well, there's nothing for me to say on that.
Yeah, Benegal sir, but to come back to a serious idea, which I think that I've also told you that I'm developing some kind of research project for myself. Is it correct to say that all your films, because I remember I met you after you made Nishant for the first time, and you at that time told me that you had an ambition to make many historical films, and in the next 3 decades you really proved it with 3 4 films. But I personally feel that all your films, including your feature films, story films, they are in a way based on a particular point of history and a particular. Is it correct to say that all your films are in a way period films and films which are uh, in terms of history, rather than the popular films which are sometimes cloud cuckoo and story which never exists? So what do you think of that?
Well, you see, it's like, people keep a diary. You look at, you jot down things that you notice as you keep a diary of, a lot of people keep diaries, little things that strike them, or what is happening, and so on and so forth, so that when they look at their diary, they can see their own way of, how they themselves have developed. Now the fact is that when you make a film, the filmmaking is in some ways a similar kind of an exercise. I mean, look,
Right.
although it's something that you is a livelihood means, but even then, it is in some ways your own diary. It's a diary of your time, the way you see it, the way the filmmaker sees it, and the way he reacts to the his contemporary world. The way, and how the contemporary world changes, it can be seen in his work as well. So that is of special interest to me, and which is
Right.
one of the reasons why, for instance, if I do anything after Mujib, it will largely have to do with something like that. To track development. I appear to have lost you.
No, 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 no. Can you hear me?
I,
I can see you. Yeah, I can see you. Yeah, 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 Benagal sir. So yeah, you are developed. Yeah,
yeah, doesn't matter. Anyway,
yeah,
I can't see you, but it doesn't matter. So
yes,
you see, like, say for instance, I mean, I do have a couple of projects that I wish to explore, and
yeah,
one of them is this, that it's like, going back to different places, the different sides of the country, but
Right.
in looking at it from the
Mhm.
point of view of how they have developed and
Right.
how they are developing. In other words, to feel the pulse of contemporary India and to pick out stories from here.
Right.
And so it could be not necessarily a single film, but it could
Mm.
be a kind of series, and not necessarily a series that goes on for 52 episodes or so, but maybe
Mm.
three parts, four parts, five parts, depending on which part of India we are dealing with. Because you see, India has developed in it isn't as though the whole place has uniformly developed.
Right.
There are some parts of India that have
Mm.
developed, very fast,
Yeah.
and people have been, people who work there also has
Yeah.
to do the kind of work culture that they have. For instance,
Yeah.
look at Punjab, or you can look at our riverine areas where
Mm.
there's a lot of industry developing, and
Mm.
also our main agricultural areas and so on and so forth.
Mm.
So I think there is a lot to be done in that area
Mm.
in terms of our recognizing how it is happening. But of
And
course,
that is the project that you are talking about is your next film or the series of films.
yeah,
Yeah.
it could be a series.
Yeah.
It can't possibly be told in a single film.
So it will be in a way a television series. Is that correct?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, yeah. And Abhinandan, my last thing which I want to talk to you is about because the our South Asian Cinema Foundation is doing a project on merchant ivory films. I have a thesis that merchant ivory films are in a way because they came in the 60s, 70s and onwards, they were part of the same new kind of film that came from filmmakers like Mrinal Sen, Adur and you. Would you, because I will be doing a book on that, would you agree with me that they were, in a way, extension of the same new kind of films, keeping the most of their themes abroad and cross culture?
Well, I wouldn't want to say that, it's like taking too much credit. I think, each generation looks at the world in their own way. Of course, they will also be, motivated by what went before them and what they want to extend and what they want to give up, in what went before them. So that's that's the story of how things evolve in any case. So it is really something that I need to think about, and I
Yeah,
don't think I think about it at any time, really. You do go about your work because you're always living in the present.
right.
You don't worry about what happened in the past, but you only go back to the past to see how we are evolving, you know,
Exactly.
rather than anything else. And of course, as far as the future is concerned, it's anybody's guess where we will reach.
Yeah, yeah. Right, right. So, the Benegal Sahab, what is fascinating that your whole career, in which you have given different kinds of films which relate to social change and all that, whether it is Ankur or is it Mandi or Bhumika. But the fact that you have done uh, at least four major works on history, starting, say, in the 80s from Bharat Ek Khoj, then you did Making of a Mahatma, and then, of course, Bose was a great film, and now this film on Mujib. So, what do you think? What is your own feeling about what you wanted to do about so many historical projects? When I spoke to you when you had done Junoon, after that, I still remember I came to Bombay. But now you have come a long way.
Well, this But this is inevitable. You keep because you are keeping track of the world around you. You are looking at it. When you look back and you say, how much have we traveled, particularly in development terms, development of the country, in the manner in which we are changing, in the manner in which we are going forward, all of that. So it's for me that has been the perennially fascinating thing, because it's in the nature of human beings to want to develop, to do well, and
Right.
particularly, you see, these motivations are very strong in what you, what in the West would be called a developing country,
Mm.
much more motivated than their own countries now, because they're coming to a position of a plateau, where they have developed as much as they can.
Mhm.
If they develop any further, the the natural resources will not be enough for those ambitions. So you now think ecologically, you think in so many different ways. So, but as far as India is concerned, we are still on the development curve. And if we are on that, then we will also have to start thinking. Not only do we develop, but also we see how do we get the resources without becoming a burden on nature itself.
Can I
That yeah, many such things. Yeah.
can I say, that in the although you have been a filmmaker, but if I see your whole career, you are hardly a filmmaker like your cousin Guru Dutt was or Raj Kapoor was. So I sometimes feel in the garb of being a filmmaker, you are actually a historian or a commentator or a person who is as an alibi to make films. You are trying to forward your thinking, how you see the country.
Well, it's really your view of a changing world. It doesn't matter whether you're a filmmaker or anybody else, but as a filmmaker, you use the medium of film, which is your chosen medium to function in, which is my chosen medium to function in. But you see,
Mhm.
the end is not that. The end is to continue to explore. There is no such thing as an end. It's a continuing process. So I'm more interested in the process than thinking in terms of saying, well, this is the end. There is no end. It's just the process and the progress towards in that process.
So are you do you think that you are a bigger filmmaker or a bigger thinker?
Film is my medium of functioning. Some people are writers, where writing is their medium to express themselves. So film is my medium to express myself. Individual films, of course, there will always be, but that's fine. It's like if you're a writer, you write books. Now the fact is, if you're a filmmaker, you make films. But filmmaking is your way of trying to understand the world itself.
Absolutely. Very correct. Last question, Manuel Saab, it's entirely up to you whether you would like to answer that. At the moment, the way in India, the situation is so divisive about political development, about the way the politics is being done. How do you see this process as a thinker, this absolute division, and yet the country is progressing? Would you like to comment on that?
I didn't quite follow what you said.
What I'm saying that this at the moment the country, because of the way the present government is there, and the way the opposition is playing up, there seems to be a vertical kind of ideological war that is going on. So how do you see this process?
No, no, I think, finally, democracy is coming into its own. For now,
Right,
for once, we have a proper opposition. We have a government, we have an opposition. So
right.
I think if you wish to see democracy at work, you have to come to India, because there is democracy at work here. A lot of people may not agree with me, but I think it's a very interesting time to be in, because you actually see democracy at work. It's not just a formal concept of saying government and opposition. It's much more than that, because the people are fighting for certain values, certain views, which they wish to see, brought into our contemporary life. Now, so today in India, we have both the opposition and the ruling powers, both of them, they're vying with each other to,
Mhm.
in fact, fighting. Of course, it's a fight for power, certainly, but power can no longer be the way it used to be, because people are also much more, about, much more savvy about what the government can do for them and
Mhm.
what they can do for the government. So they can do for the government by creating a government, putting in place a government of their choice. But the fact is that there is also an expectation from that government. You see,
Exactly.
we've actually become much more democratic than we ever were.
So you think it's not anarchical, it is democratic, the process at the moment.
Yeah.
So
Well,
thank you so much,
my
and my
best,
regards to, yeah,
my best wishes to you, your family, your
yeah.
wife, your daughter, everybody.